Hi, my name is Amanda Butler, and tonight I'll be presenting my fourth speech. First, I will pay my audience. I have Vincent, Coriel, my mother Della, my sister Katrina, and my father Henry. And my two kids are in there too. Isaiah, hi. All right. Like I said, tonight I'll be presenting my fourth speech. So last week in my last discussion, we talked about school uniforms, and I gave you guys all the reasons on why I think that school uniforms are best. Does anybody remember some of the reasons I gave?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I remember you talked about how school uniforms make students look more professional.
Right. That was one of the things.
Yeah,
Anybody
it
else?
made them pay more attention in school instead of each other.
That sure is right.
I know.
Okay. So, let's see. So, if all schools were required to implement a uniform policy, do you think it would be successful? How do you think the parents would feel about that? Like if it was required?
Well, you have some pushback to start with, but
Right.
once if they made them do it, they got to do it.
True.
The good thing is that you don't have to worry about the clothes you're going to buy for the next year. You have a school uniform.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about what they're going to wear. Jordans or sneakers. They're all going to wear the same thing.
Right. So I think that they're best. That's what I said last week. According to AdvantagePress.com, the issue of school uniforms caught former President Bill Clinton's eye when a school in Long Beach, California, they released some numbers suggesting that after only 1 year of having a mandatory school uniform policy, they had significant decreases in vandalism, fighting, and they had higher test scores. So, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's really good. The crime rate dropped 91%, suspension dropped 90%. Sex offenses dropped 96%, and that was all just after 1 year of using the school uniforms. Because they all, of course, had to dress the same, couldn't wear the tight skirts, the little shorts, and the gang uniforms and things like that. So I think that was pretty good just after that 1 year. So this evening, my intention is to persuade each of you that schools should adopt a uniform policy. We pretty much already recapped what we talked about last week. Then we'll discuss some solutions in regards to successfully implementing school uniforms in schools. Just to recap a little bit more, we learned that school uniforms improve student discipline and motivation. Last week we saw how discipline was like the #1 problem with teachers. So the uniforms really helped with that, and the kids were motivated to learn. Once again, they weren't focused on, what each other had on. They could focus more on their schoolworks. We also saw how it could prevent bullying and cut down on violence on school grounds. Kids weren't being teased about what they had on, and the gangs couldn't, couldn't wear their gang paraphernalia, if you want to say they, like how gangs are identified by certain colors or things like that with the school uniforms. It cuts down on that because they all will be wearing the same thing. And it can also incite school spirit because all the kids will, be dressed the same. They'll be proud to be a part of that school because they all look alike and they'll be happy. All right, so a plan that I think they should have is to adopt the uniform policy. The decisions made by the states, local school districts, and of course, parents need to be part of this. Parents play a big role in deciding, whether or not the school uniforms are a go and if the kids are going to like the school uniforms. The strongest push for school uniforms in recent years has come from parent groups who want better discipline in their children's schools. So parent support is essential in having school uniforms in schools. Some parents argue that school uniforms do not protect the students' religious expressions, but all school uniform policies must accommodate students whose religious beliefs are substantially burdened by a uniform requirement. So in order for a uniform policy to be successful, schools have to consider that. They have to take all that into consideration, and they have to, once the uniform policy is agreed upon, they need to have an agreement that they can vary that if, for certain things like religion. So introducing a school uniform policy will be practical because the school would describe this policy clearly and publicize it well, so it won't be a surprise to parents. So before admissions, they will have things on the websites. They will lay everything out for you before you, chose to let your child go to that school. Like, it wouldn't be like, oh, I didn't know we had to wear school uniforms. You would know about it right away. Then the schools will assist families that need financial help. School districts with uniform policies will make provisions for students whose families are unable to afford uniforms. They should have arrangements set in place to ensure that no family feels like they can't afford the uniforms. So a lot of parents argue that they are too expensive, but actually uniforms are less expensive than the clothes that they typically wear, because you can get uniforms from pretty much anywhere these days, from Kmart to Macy's, from Walmart to Dillard's. You can get them anywhere. So it's really, hard to say that they're too expensive because they're really not. But once again, the schools will provide assistance by providing uniforms to students who can't afford them. You can also get community and business leaders to contribute financially to support uniforms. And they should make sure that the uniforms are available in a variety of places. Also, with the policy, the schools will have an opt-out provision, but it's with the parental consent. If they opt for the child not to wear the uniform, it has to be signed by the parent. So there are a lot of ways that we can get schools to adopt the policy. Do you guys have any ideas on how we can make this happen? Get schools to adopt the policy?
It could be a phase-in program where you start by maybe certain grades. You start by the younger grades or the older grades. You have them slowly get into the uniform. Have a day where you just wear the pants.
That's a
and then
great
all of a sudden
idea.
you start with a shirt and then maybe like a vest or something like that.
That is a great idea. That's actually how my son's school, how they do the uniform. The younger kids don't have to wear them, but as they get older, they'll start introducing it so the parents can get used to them wearing them. Because he'll be in kindergarten starting this year, and this will be his first year wearing uniforms. So I think that is a good way just to kind of ease it in, especially for schools that have all along never had a policy. They should just kind of, ease it in to get the parents used to it. I know that with Isaiah, with my son, they also started like on Fridays. They all had to wear like the same color shirt, getting them ready for the uniforms. So I think another way is like to just educate the public on the benefits of school uniform. That's number one. Or even take it as far as having petitions for parents to sign, like, they feel strongly about having the school uniform policy implemented in their schools. That's another good way. Any other ideas? All right. So in conclusion, I hope that you all agree that school uniforms are beneficial and that schools should adopt the uniform policy. Some of the plans we talked about were for the schools to actually, get on board with actually adopting the policy, assisting families that need help, and determine if they'll have an opt-out plan or voluntary or a mandatory school uniform. But of course, mandatory is the way to go, because if you have that option of voluntary, there's no point in having a school uniform. So hopefully, I hope that everybody will take an active stand with this, this big. Well, it's just like this ongoing debate with the school uniforms. I know I am. I'm really excited that my son will be wearing school uniform. So, thank you all for your time.